Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca and welcome back to... Okay, I gotta take this thing off, it doesn't feel right. Today, we're continuing our discussion of mirroring on BBC Sherlock from last month with Series 3 and the Abominable Bride. As a quick refresher from last time, for the purposes of these videos, I'm using mirroring as an umbrella term for mirror characters, who are minor characters who reveal something about a main character through similarities, and foils, who reveal something about a main character through differences. Some indicators that a character is a mirror are: 1. They look like a main character. 2. They dress like a main character, or have similar facial hair. That one will be important in this video. 3. They have the same name as a main character. 4. They say or do similar things to a main character or are in a similar situation. And 5. They will be physically placed in front of a mirror when the writers want to be particularly obvious about the parallel. As you might expect, there are a lot more mirrors in Series 3, especially in the Abominable Bride where everything is representative. There are also callbacks to some of the mirrors I discussed in Series 1 and Series 2, reinforcing the connection between those characters and the central relationship of the series. Ultimately, all of these characters exist to hint that the story the show is telling is a romance. This even applies to the more meta mirror characters, like Anderson. So as many of you will know, about a week before Series 3 aired, the BBC released a 7-minute long mini-sode called Many Happy Returns. The first half of the episode consists of Anderson explaining his Sherlock theories to Lestrade. Pay attention to the framing here, and you'll notice that Anderson is placed in front of a mirror. Unlike most of the mirrors, Anderson isn't a stand-in for Sherlock or John, or even Mycroft, Moriarty, or Mary, but for the fandom. Specifically the fandom in 2013, which was mainly focused on coming up with theories for how Sherlock survived and what he was up to in the meantime. This gets obvious in The Empty Hearse when Anderson starts up a Sherlock fan club.
I founded The Empty Hearse so like-minded people could meet, discuss theories,
and start saying Sherlock fandom sayings.
I believe in Sherlock Holmes.
I'm only pointing him out here because there's another fandom analog on the show that I'll be getting into towards the end of the episode, and it's very important that you know that this is something the writers have done before. With that setup out of the way, let's get back to the John and Sherlock mirrors. Many Happy Returns also shows us how John is coping with Sherlock's loss after 2 years. Not well.
I can tell you what you can do. You can stop being dead.
Okay. Okay, I'm ready now.
You might remember from Mirrors Part 1 that I mentioned that Lucy, Andrew West's fiancée, was a parallel to John's grief after the fall. Well, here's where we finally get the payoff for that. The set designers obviously had that comparison in mind when they were designing John's apartment.
Sorry, but you must understand
That's what they think, isn't it, his bosses?
This is driving home the point that John is grieving like he lost a life partner, not a friend. In The Empty Hearse, all of the clients are mirrors. For starters, all of the patients John sees at work have issues relating either to their genitalia or to their butts.
Mr. Summerson.
Right.
Undescended testicle.
Right.
This is Mr. Blake. Piles.
Piss pot. It's nothing to worry about, just a small infection by the sound of it.
That's kind of yikes. The first of Sherlock's clients is Howard the train guy, a well-traveled,
Just look at the map, though. He's getting closer.
sentimental, anxious,
Do you have any idea what you've done?
Okay, John, I'm suddenly realizing I probably owe you some sort of an apology.
creature of habit,
Proper to Baker Street, who knows, jump out of a cake.
Baker Street? He isn't there anymore.
with appalling halitosis.
I find nothing irresistible in the hat of a well-travelled, anxious, sentimental, unfit creature of habit with appalling halitosis.
That last one is probably a reference to the fact that Sherlock didn't actually get to kiss John the night before like he wanted to, and halitosis is one thing that would make someone unkissable. Sherlock incorrectly guesses that Howard has OCD.
1, perhaps 2 patches would indicate sentimentality, but 5's obsessive behavior, obsessive-compulsive.
Hardly. Your client left you behind. What sort of an obsessive-compulsive would do that?
Because he himself has OCD.
A somewhat shorter exile than we'd imagined, brother mine. Probably adequate given your levels of OCD.
And then most revealingly, Sherlock is clearly using Howard as an example of how he still wants friendship even though he feels different. And he puts on Howard's hat, taking on his persona.
Well, anybody who wears a hat as stupid as this isn't in the habit of hanging around other people, is he?
Not at all. Maybe he just doesn't mind being different. Doesn't necessarily have to be isolated.
Exactly.
I'm sorry?
He's different, so what? Why would he mind? You're quite right. Why would anyone mind?
As a fun side note, later in the episode when Sherlock and Molly go to visit Howard, Sherlock scoffs at the idea that Howard would have a girlfriend.
My girlfriend's a big fan of yours.
Girlfriend?
Do we really think that's because he's a loner after that really touching speech about how even if you're different, you don't have to be alone? Or is there another reason why Howard having a girlfriend is laughable? Especially considering that Howard is obsessed with trains.
I like trains.
Yes.
Then there are Sherlock's other clients. I mean, considering that John's relationship with Mary is introduced in this episode, it's just so weird that two of his cases involve selfish and deceptive romantic partners, one of whom is totally lying about his identity,
Stepfather posing his online boyfriend.
and one who's having an affair.
Oh, it's because you emptied it. Weight loss, hair dye, Botox affair. Lawyer, next!
Fancy that. If you've already seen my Molly video, you know that she, like John, is given a new relationship in this episode.
Congratulations, by the way.
So we can draw parallels between those two relationships as well. Like the fact that neither John or Molly is over Sherlock.
Is it serious, you see?
Yeah. We've moved on.
Oh, God. Is it serious?
What? No, I'm not ill. I'm moving on.
And that both of their partners are meant to replace him.
We're getting married. Well, I'm going to ask anyway.
So soon after Sherlock?
Well, yes.
So things already aren't looking great for Mary, and we haven't even discussed her as a foil for Sherlock yet. There are more similarities than differences at the start of the episode. Both make assumptions about how important they are to John.
What life? I've been away.
I agree.
What?
I agree, I'm the best thing that could have happened to you.
And both try to downplay John's initial anger at Sherlock's return. Sherlock because he obviously doesn't want John to be angry with him.
Oh, well, he would have needed a confidant.
I'm worried that, he might say something indiscreet.
What?
Or, let the cat out of the bag.
Oh, so this is my fault? Why am I the only one who thinks that this is wrong? The only one reacting like a human being?
Overreact.
Overreacting!
But then, piece by piece, the differences start to become clear. For starters, Mary has no reason to say that John is overreacting here. She's just dismissing his emotions as irrelevant. She also manipulates John at multiple points to try to get him to go back to Sherlock.
Can you believe his nerve?
I like him.
What?
I like him. Are you going to see him again?
No, I'm going to work.
Oh, and after work, are you going to see him again?
Yes, it's what we the audience want to happen in the episode, but John has every right to be upset, and Mary never even acknowledging that shows that something is wrong, especially in contrast to the fact that Sherlock leaves John alone after that first meeting.
This gonna be your new arrangement, is it? Just giving it a go. Right. So, John?
Not really in the picture anymore.
And when John eventually comes to him on his own, he apologizes multiple times.
Sorry again. Sorry.
Sorry.
What? I can't do it, John. I don't know how. Forgive me.
What?
Please, John, forgive me for all the hurt that I caused you.
There's also a subtle hint that Mary is totally lying to John with the mustache bit. Sherlock instantly makes it clear that he doesn't like the mustache.
Seriously, it's not a joke. You're really keeping this.
But John is convinced that Mary likes it even though she doesn't.
Mary likes it.
No, she doesn't.
She does.
She doesn't.
Oh.
Meaning that she lied to him about it. She can't even be honest with him about something as simple as facial hair. Then there's a text which I think applies to both Sherlock and Mary. Mary is texted a skip code which includes the phrase John or James multiple times. James here obviously being a parallel for Moriarty. That goes back to the contrast I talked about a lot in Mirrors Part 1, that Sherlock will have to choose between John and Moriarty. And if Sherlock is picking John's side, that leaves Mary with James. As long as Sherlock is around, John has no chance of being happy with anyone else. Sherlock makes it clear in the train car that when he came back, he ruined all of John's chances at a future with Mary.
If I hadn't come back, you wouldn't be standing there. You'd still have a future. With Mary.
Yeah, I know.
That relationship is doomed to fail. There is one happy relationship in this episode, though, and it's probably the most obvious Johnlock mirror of them all. In the empty hearse, we meet Mr. and Mrs. Holmes, who happen to be dressed exactly like Sherlock and John.
Especially his glasses.
Glasses.
But they weren't letting anyone into Parliament, remember?
Great, wonderful. Just get out.
Give us a ring.
This is exactly what John and Sherlock will be like after a few decades of domesticity, finishing each other's sentences and all.
Blooming things. I said, why don't you get a chain, wear them around your neck? It's what? Like Larry Grayson.
This is a bit out of order, but the fact that John looks exactly like Mr. Holmes gives this line
Beauty is a construct based entirely on childhood impressions, influences, and role models.
a whole new meaning. Since Mr. Holmes was one of Sherlock's childhood role models, then that means his answer is yes, he does think John is attractive. That and the fact that Mr. Holmes thinks Mrs. Holmes is
Unbelievably hot.
and John saying that Mr. and Mrs. Holmes are
Fine example of married life.
yeah, things are looking pretty great for John and Sherlock's future. Until then, though, we have more angsty mirrors. And we're getting to the part my friend Leslie has been waiting for. More James Sholto! Sholto is very obviously a Sherlock mirror. Like Irene before him, this mirror is established with both of them getting dressed at the same time. The transition to Sholto's introduction is bridged by Sherlock saying into battle as he gets dressed in his suit, and then going over to Sholto putting on his literal battle dress.
Into battle.
Sholto's inclusion does two main things. It shows that John is definitely bisexual, and it shows that Sherlock is pining over John just like Sholto is. The conversation between Sholto and John at the reception is extremely loaded.
Very glad to see you, sir. I know you don't really do this sort of thing.
Well, I do for old friends, Watson. John, it's good to see you.
You too.
He corrects himself when he calls him Watson and calls him John instead. Something is up. Both Sherlock and Sholto have been at the center of media scandals.
The press and the families gave them hell.
The press will turn, Sherlock. They always turn, and they'll turn on you.
And both get frequent death threats.
He gets more death threats than you.
Oh, I wouldn't count on that.
Throughout the episode, Sherlock is demonstrably jealous of Sholto.
So that's him.
This is
Major Sholto.
Uh-huh.
It's definitely him that he talks about.
John says he's the most unsociable man he's ever met.
He is. He's the most unsociable. That's why he's bouncing around him like a puppy.
Even secretly Googling him to try to learn about his past. But here's the thing, that jealousy isn't one-sided. When Sholto has been stabbed, he refuses to let them into the room. He demands that Sherlock solve the case, and it's clear that there are some sour grapes there.
Solve it then.
I'm sorry?
You're the famous Mr. Holmes. Solve the case. On you go.
Sherlock isn't the only drama queen around here, but that's fair. Sholto had to sit through that best man speech like everybody else. So he knows that there's something going on between Sherlock and John. When Sholto finds out he's being killed by his own uniform, he walks up to a mirror and talks about how it's a fitting end.
I was to be killed by my uniform. How appropriate.
He solved the case. Major, you're supposed to open the door now. A deal is a deal.
I'm not even supposed to have this anymore. They gave me special dispensation to keep it. I couldn't imagine life out of this uniform. I suppose, given the circumstances, I don't have to.
Again, Sherlock is not the only drama queen. John definitely has a type. Sholto is about to take off his belt when the mirror is made explicit through his dialogue.
Mr. Holmes, you and I are similar, I think.
Yes, I think we are.
He says they're similar while he's looking into a mirror. Because of this next line, a lot of people think Sherlock has been feeling suicidal as he tried to plan John's wedding. But he won't go through with it because he knows what that would do to John.
There's a proper time to die, isn't there?
Of course there is.
And one should embrace it when it comes. Like a soldier.
Of course one should, but not at John's wedding. We wouldn't do that, would we? You and me. We would never do that to John Watson.
First and foremost, Sholto and Sherlock are alike in their love for John, and this scene brings that right into the forefront. That reminder of his love for John is enough to get James to change his mind, and he opens the door to let John in.
I'm going to break it down.
Wait, you won't have to.
I believe I am in need of medical attention.
I believe I'm your doctor.
Both of them would do anything for John. Now let's touch on some of the other mirrors in this episode before I circle back to the Mary versus Sherlock foil. This is the wedding episode after all, so I'm sure here at least there will be nothing but nice statements about heterosexual relationships. I mean, it's not like they would throw in a doctor who just went through a divorce to hint at the idea that this relationship is temporary or anything.
Recently divorced doctor with the ginger cat. A bone conversion and a history of erectile dysfunction.
Okay, but Mary is great. I mean, John might have his exes hanging around the wedding, but Mary is totally devoted to John. It's not like she has a really close ex still hanging around or anything.
David!
Congratulations. You look, very nice.
Thanks.
Okay, but like, that doesn't mean anything. The exes and the divorce thing are just a fluke. The episode does nothing to even suggest that cheating would be an option. The show would never bring up infidelity.
Long-term relationship, compulsive cheat.
My husband is 3 people.
Identical triplets, 1.5 million births, solved it without leaving the flat.
And then I found out about all the other women.
Maybe he changed his identity.
Maybe he's married.
Our Mayfly man was trying to escape the suffocating chains of domesticity, and instead of endless nights in watching the telly or going to barbecues with awful, dreadful, boring people he couldn't stand, he used his wits, cleverness, and powers of disguise to play the field. He was...
You all saw me trying, right? Like, I didn't want this marriage to be doomed. Okay, that's a lie. I did, but I tried to be objective about it. It's just clear that the writers don't have the same dilemma. Oh, and let's talk about the Mayfly man while we're here, who both John and Sherlock, or just Sherlock, depending on how you read a certain scene, I'll be getting back to that later, assumed was having affairs to escape from his boring married life. What was his first name again?
Jonathan Small.
Our first John mirror through name association. Well, unless you count Janine, which I am. Like the other women who show interest in Sherlock, Janine acts as a foil for John. Oh, and the 3 other women who have expressed interest in Sherlock have all been involved with Moriarty.
Hi. It was nice to meet you.
Jim Moriarty sends his love.
Darling, they didn't have any ground coffee, so I just got normal.
So that puts a lot more suspicion on her, and reinforces that dichotomy of Sherlock being romantically with John being the good choice, and anyone else being an evil choice through their association with the main villain. Like how all of John's romantic interests are in direct competition with Sherlock, Janine acts as kind of a stand-in for John.
Can I keep you?
Do you like solving crime?
Do you have a vacancy?
Unlike John, and like the rest of the women who are interested in Sherlock, Janine knows where Sherlock's interests lie, and spends the reception getting him to point out attractive men. She knows that Sherlock will never be interested in her because he's gay and in love with John.
I wish you weren't... whatever it is you are.
John, meanwhile, wrongly believes that he has no chance with Sherlock because he has no idea how he actually feels. And before I forget, Mrs. Hudson is another John mirror in this episode. It's established that the writers are comparing John's marriage to Mrs. Hudson's early on in the episode, when Mrs. Hudson shares a story of her own wedding with Sherlock the morning of John's wedding.
My best friend, Margaret, she was my chief bridesmaid. We were going to be best friends forever. We always said that. But I hardly saw her after that.
Later on in the episode, Mrs. Hudson and John directly talk to each other about how their situations are similar.
What about you?
Me?
Did you think you'd found the right one when you married Mr. Hudson?
No.
Since Mrs. Hudson in this episode is a clear parallel for John, that makes Mr. Hudson a parallel for Mary. There are certainly a lot of similarities between the two.
It was just a whirlwind thing for us. I knew it wouldn't work, but I just got sort of swept along.
I know it hasn't been long. I mean, I know we haven't known each other for a long time.
Of course, I didn't know what he was up to.
And towards the end of this conversation, we get some foreshadowing for how John will eventually feel when Mary is out of the picture.
So, when he was actually arrested for blowing someone's head off, it was quite a relief, to be honest.
Another hugely important mirror character in this episode is Tessa. While she interrupts Sherlock's and John's last best chance to get together before the wedding, her story tells us a lot about how Sherlock and John feel about each other, especially in terms of who they choose to cut to in reaction to certain lines.
I don't a lot. I mean, I don't date all that much, and
I think you should know that I consider myself married to my work.
he seemed nice, you know? We seemed to automatically connect.
Want to see some more?
Oh, God, yes.
We had one night, dinner, such interesting conversation. It was lovely.
So you've got a boyfriend? No.
Right, okay.
I'd love to have gone further, but I thought, no, this is special. Let's take it slowly.
Dinner? Starving.
Exchange numbers.
So have you got cash?
Take my card.
Maybe he wasn't quite as keen as I was. I just thought at least he'd called to say that we were finished.
And Tessa's eventual conclusion for why things didn't work out is that she was dating a ghost.
Mr. Holmes, I honestly think I had dinner with a ghost.
We all have a past, Watson. Ghosts. They're the shadows that define our every sunny day.
Wonder how that made its way into Sherlock's subconscious. And finally, before we get back to that main foil, there's one other Sherlock mirror in this episode, Archie. He happens to look a lot like Sherlock. and is interested in similar things.
What's all the stuff in his eye?
Maggots.
Cool.
Sherlock clearly identifies with him at the start of the episode.
What for?
Grown-ups like that sort of thing.
Why?
I don't know, I'll ask one.
But through Archie, Sherlock finds some closure. When Sherlock was a kid, none of the police would listen to him when he said that Carl Powers was murdered.
I was only a kid myself. I read about it in the papers. I made a fuss. I tried to get the police interested, but nobody seemed to think it was important.
At the wedding, he listens to Archie's suggestions and manages to solve the case, resolving that childhood trauma.
Mr. Holmes, Mr. Holmes!
Oh, hello again, Archie. What's your theory? Get this right and there's a headless nun in it for you.
The Invisible Man could do it.
The who, the what, the why, the when, the where?
The Invisible Man with the invisible knife. The one who tried to kill the guardsman.
The actor who plays Archie also appears in The Abominable Bride, but if you watch the ending credits, his name has been changed from Archie to Billy, meaning that we're definitely meant to see a connection between these two characters. Remember that Sherlock's first name was actually William, and considering all the Billys running around, he probably went as Billy as a child. Okay, now back to Mary. She's shown in the beginning of the episode to be rubbing in the fact that while she's not the first person John loved, she'll be the last.
Oh, Sherlock. Neither of us were the first, you know.
Stop smiling.
It's my wedding day.
There's also a recurring message that John getting married will ruin the dynamic that Sherlock and John share.
Marriage changes you as a person in ways that you can't imagine.
It's the end of an era, isn't it?
John and Mary. Domestic bliss.
I will be visiting, you know.
Ooh, I've heard that one before.
No, it's different now, though, isn't it? It's different to when we thought we'd lost him.
Well, marriage changes everything, John.
But from now on, there's a new story. Today begin the adventures of Mary Elizabeth Watson and John Hamish Watson.
But why would that be the case when John and Sherlock can still do cases when John is in a relationship?
You know it won't alter anything, right? Me and Mary getting married. We'll still be doing all this.
Why would John getting married put a strain on things? Unless it's not just a friendship, it's a romance. We shouldn't worry that the story of John and Mary is what the writers are going for. We're quickly shown that this arrangement leaves both John and Sherlock miserable. At the beginning of the episode, John is aggravated at everything.
There is nothing the matter with me.
And Sherlock is back on drugs.
Oh, hello, John. Didn't expect to see you here. Come for me too.
Since Sherlock is back on drugs now, I guess it makes sense that Sherlock's next mirror is introduced in a drug den.
Bill Wiggins.
Nice observational skills, Billy.
Another Billy, who like Sherlock is good at deductions.
Well, it's the creases, isn't it? The two creases down the front. It's been recently folded, but it's not new. You must have dressed in a hurry this morning. So all your shirts must be kept like that. But why? Maybe because you cycle to work every morning, shower when you get there, and then dress in the clothes you brought with you. You keep your shirts folded, ready to pack.
And chemistry.
Wiggins is an excellent chemist.
I calculated your wife's dose myself.
He's hanging around to tell us what Sherlock can't, that his relapse is a serious deal, hence why he's being reflected in a homeless junkie, and to give us that deduction on the state of John's marriage. He keeps all of his clothes ready to pack, he's ready to leave at any second, and he's cycling to work rather than carpooling with Mary to get a few minutes away from her. And just by coincidence, Molly's engagement has fallen through.
Sorry your engagement's over. I'm fairly grateful for the lack of a ring.
Stop it. What could it mean? We also get more of a rivalry between John and Janine in this episode, which Janine is definitely aware of.
Oh, could you be a love and put some coffee on?
Sure, right, yeah.
Thanks. Oh, how's Mary? How's married life?
She's fine. We're both fine.
John is pretty obviously upset to discover that Sherlock is in a relationship.
Oh, John, hi. How are you?
Janine?
Especially when he sees it firsthand.
I might call you. Unless I meet someone prettier.
And even when Janine has left, he can't stop thinking about it.
Dinner.
Sorry, what, dinner?
Me and Mary coming for dinner with wine and sitting.
And don't even get me started on his reaction to Sherlock proposing. I don't think this is what a platonic relationship looks like. Of course, it turns out that Sherlock's relationship with Janine was just a facade.
So what will you tell her?
Well, I'll tell her that our entire relationship was a ruse to break into her boss's office. I imagine she'll want to stop seeing me at that point, but you're the expert on women.
Because any relationship on this show with Sherlock and John with anyone but each other is doomed to fail. Even Janine knows that.
You shouldn't have lied to me. I know what kind of man you are. We could have been friends.
Which leaves one last relationship to fail. Even though Sherlock hugely messed up in the Reichenbach fall and how he approached his return to John, he has done everything in his power since then to try to make it right. He respected John's new relationship even though it left him heartbroken, and even painstakingly planned his wedding. When it turns out that the woman John married has dangerous secrets, he offers to help her because she's what John wants, and he wants John to be happy.
Mary, whatever he's got on you, let me help.
Like with Sholto, he tries to use a shared love of John to bond with Mary in this high-stress moment.
Oh, Sherlock, if you take one more step, I swear I will kill you.
No, Mrs. Watson. You won't.
But Mary, as it turns out, doesn't love John the way Sherlock does. She sees him as a possession, as something she has a right to keep at any cost necessary, even if that means risking the death of the person John holds most dear. When Sherlock offers nothing but help, Mary shoots him in the chest. In the empty house scene, we get that distinction again. Mary will do anything to keep John, and Sherlock looks disgusted at the selfishness that Mary calls love.
John can't ever know that I lied to him. It would break him, and I would lose him forever. And Sherlock, I will never let that happen. Please, understand, there is nothing in this world I would not do to stop that happening.
The ultimate conversation back at Baker Street between the three of them is framed as Sherlock and John as the inseparable team, and Mary as the outsider.
Sit.
Why?
Because that's where they sit. The people who come in here with their stories. The clients, that's all you are now, Mary. You're a client. This is where you sit and talk, and this is where we sit and listen. Then we decide if we want you or not.
And in this episode, while Mary shoots Sherlock just to keep herself safe and preserve her relationship with John, Sherlock shoots Magnuson to protect John, knowing very well it will take him away from John forever.
To clarify, Appledoor's bolts only exist in your mind, nowhere else, just there.
They're not real. They never have been. Nothing.
Get away from me, John! Stay well back!
There's a clear distinction between Mary's selfish love and Sherlock's self-sacrificial love. It goes all the way back to that Jesus imagery in The Empty Hearse. Sherlock is a martyr. We see at the end of the episode that the only possible way that the show could end with Mary and John together is to have Sherlock out of the picture. And even that doesn't last very long.
There's an east wind coming.
Of course, Sherlock didn't know he was going to come back, so before he got on the plane, he took enough drugs to OD, because he didn't want to live through the next 6 months with no hope of seeing John again. And so we get the Abominable Bride. Since the episode takes place in Sherlock's head, everything is representative. If I talked about what all of the characters mean here, I would have nothing left for my video on that episode. So I'll be sticking to the Sherlock, John, Mary, and Moriarty mirrors, and of course, the League of Furies. You had to know they were coming. I will say this again, it's really important that this episode takes place in Sherlock's head, because that means the mirrors in this episode are revealing Sherlock's perceptions rather than any greater truths about the show. Sherlock is using this drug trip to try to figure things out, and knowing that all of the mirrors are colored by his perceptions is crucial. Not keeping that in mind is making a lot of you make a very big mistake. So this episode centers around the Abominable Bride and Sherlock trying to figure out just who she is. For the audience, the true Abominable Bride is helpfully labeled at the start of the episode.
No case pushed my friend to such mental and physical extremes as that of the Abominable Bride.
In case you forgot, that's Mary under the veil. But as we'll see later, there are multiple brides running around. Most of them have nothing to do with Mary. So the first mistake right off the bat is thinking that all of the brides represent Mary, when most of them are martyrs for a great cause, soldiers in a noble war. Those brides aren't Mary. They're how Sherlock sees himself. He's the martyr. He's Amelia Ricoletti. I know that a lot of you are going into this thinking that Amelia is Moriarty. I understand why. I was there, but I'm gonna walk you through this. Let's start with Amelia's introduction. The connection begins with the fire that Sherlock lights transitioning into the guns that Amelia is firing.
From the beginning, then.
Amelia very publicly stages suicide from a tall place in front of a large crowd. Yes, she shoots herself in the head rather than jumps, but everything else about the situation is reminiscent of Sherlock's staged suicide, not Moriarty's. She also has dark hair, blue eyes, and prominent cheekbones like Sherlock does. And like Sherlock, she puts on a face for her public suicide. In Sherlock's case, that was pretending to be a fraud.
I'm a fake
Sherlock. The newspapers were right all along.
In Amelia's, it's literally putting on a face with makeup.
White as death, mouth like a crimson wound.
Later, Amelia comes back from the dead to confront her husband, who has the same mustache as John.
Thomas Ricoletti. Amelia Ricoletti's husband.
She effectively ruins his chances of moving on by telling him not to forget her.
Do not forget me. Do not forget me.
Like Sherlock feels that he did to John when he returned.
Could you just... Interesting thing, a tuxedo. There's distinction to friends and anonymity to waiters.
John? John, what is it?
Well, short version. Not dead.
She even tops it off by announcing a shotgun wedding.
What the hell's all this about?
What does it look like, my handsome friend? It's a shotgun wedding.
All the signs are there.
Signs?
Signs of 3. Mary, I think you should do a pregnancy test.
Reading this Amelia case with the understanding that Amelia is Sherlock makes the progression to the episode's climax make a lot more sense. The entire time, Sherlock is trying to sort out his emotional baggage with the events that happened during the Reichenbach fall and everything he's done since. Amelia is tied to his own fall through the name Ricoletti, which also appeared in the Reichenbach fall.
Peter Ricoletti.
And through Amelia writing YOU on the wall. Which is only one letter off from IOU. This change shifts the message from a threat of revenge to a very obvious indicator that Amelia is Sherlock. Since all of this is in Sherlock's head, he's the only you present. When Sherlock sees that message, he is reminded of Moriarty, of the case he's supposed to be trying to solve. But the majority of this episode is Sherlock exploring his own repressed emotions. The next iteration of the bride's ghost also involves mirrors. This time, the married couple is John and Mary, and Sherlock is the one who sacrificed himself to make John leaving Mary possible. Keep in mind again that this is all happening in Sherlock's head, and so he's trying to cast his actions in the best possible light. Lady Carmichael, the John mirror in this scenario, is introduced by Mycroft, who reassures Sherlock that he'll find this case interesting.
Lady Carmichael's case, what is it?
Rest assured, it has features of interest.
I never really say that.
You really do.
I'm sure you're starting to get tired of me pointing this out, but Sherlock has only actually ever said the phrase feature of interest one time, and it was about John.
There was one feature, and only one feature of interest in the whole of this baffling case, and quite frankly, it was the usual. John Watson.
So this is Sherlock telling himself that Lady Carmichael is standing in for John. We also get hints that Sherlock thinks whatever Amelia, Lady Carmichael, and the rest of the brides are fighting for is a noble and worthy cause.
But these enemies, how are we to defeat them if you won't tell us about them? We don't defeat them. We most certainly lose to them. Why? Because they are right and we are wrong.
This is going to be where I really need you to keep in your mind that this is happening in Sherlock's head. So Sir Eustace did something bad in his past, something to hurt Amelia, and then married Lady Carmichael. Translating that to our main love triangle, Mary did something to hurt Sherlock, and then entered a relationship with John. In Sherlock's mind, Lady Carmichael knows what Sir Eustace did, and sends him a message to make him fear for his life.
Eustace? Daniel, Sophie, go out and play.
But Mama...
Do as I tell you quickly now. Eustace, what does this mean? What?
It means death.
I know you're thinking of John and Mycroft staging Moriarty's return, but here's the thing. So is Sherlock. This is the first solution he comes to for Moriarty's return. Sherlock can never understand Moriarty's plans. He always wants it to be cleverer, something he can figure out and subvert, and it never once has been. But we're following Sherlock's train of logic here. Sir Eustace is confronted with the bride.
She's Amelia Ricoletti.
This is where we get the lead-in for Sherlock's biggest mistake. The bride here tilts her head in the same way Mary did in Sherlock's Mind Palace in his last vow.
You don't tell John.
So... Mary Watson.
Who are you?
I demand you speak. Who are you?
He can't help but associate a killer bride with her. Lady Carmichael finishes her story, and John and Sherlock agree to investigate the case. They meet Sir Eustace, who doesn't appreciate his wife. He takes her for granted and thinks she's silly.
My wife sees terror in an orange pip.
Your wife can see worlds where no one else can see anything of value whatsoever.
This is the way that Sherlock thinks Mary sees John, and he's right. And Sir Eustace, the Mary Mirror, has secrets from his past that he worries will bring him to ruin.
Guilt is eating away at his soul.
Guilt? About what?
Something in his past. The orange pips were a reminder.
Not a joke.
Not at all. Orange pips are a traditional warning of avenging death originating in America. Sir Eustace knows this only too well.
So far, so good. They wait out that night and see a projection of the ghost made by the other members of the Invisible Army.
Cannot be true, Holmes. It cannot.
No, it can't.
Sherlock outright states that this projection cannot be true. Then the mirror shatters. That's going to be hugely important. They go inside to find that Sir Eustace is dead, and since no other windows were broken, Sherlock instantly realizes that it was an inside job, that Lady Carmichael killed him herself.
And observe what remains, which in this case is a solution so blindingly obvious even Lestrade could work it out.
Thank you.
Forget spectres from the other world. There is only one suspect with motive and opportunity. They might as well have left a note.
So again, Sherlock thinks that John is trying to bring down Mary, right up until the point that an unexpected reminder turns up.
I said the murderer did leave a note.
No, they didn't.
There's a message tied to the jacket. You must have seen it.
There's no message.
Yes!
There was no message when I found the body.
Holmes.
He can't even be bothered to finish that rationalization of events at this point. His world starts falling apart at the mere suggestion that this isn't what happened, that Moriarty might still be alive and out there.
Do you?
Do I what? How did you get that?
Do you miss him?
Moriarty's dead.
And yet.
His body was never recovered.
There's a genuine fear there. We also get a hint about Sherlock going too deep.
You're in deep, Sherlock, deeper than you ever intended to be.
Since this is deep in his own mind, it shows that the things Sherlock is trying to resolve here are also deeply rooted. This isn't just about finding a solution. It's about overcoming his own fears and guilt. After a long break where things get very bizarre and Sherlock briefly wakes up, Sherlock gets back to the case by having Mary summon them to the place where all the brides are meeting.
It's Mary.
Mary, what about her?
It's entirely possible she's in danger.
This fits another thread in the episode, of Sherlock slowly giving Mary more and more power. First making her a housewife.
And am I just to sit here?
Not at all. My dear, we'll be hungry later.
Then a spy for Mycroft.
I now rely on you to keep an eye on things, but he must never suspect you are working for me. Are you clear on that, Watson?
You can rely on me, Mr. Holmes.
Then, upon waking and seeing her cold behavior towards everyone.
Ricoletti and his abominable wife, don't you understand?
No, of course we don't. You're not making any sense, Sherlock. We've been reading John's blog. The story of how you met. Didn't seem high.
And how easily she gets into Mycroft's systems.
What are you doing?
Amelia Ricoletti, I'm looking her up.
I suppose we should. I have access to the top level of the MI5 archive.
Yep, that's where I'm looking.
What do you think of MI5 security?
I think it would be a good idea.
He makes her more central to the plan.
What the devil are you doing here?
I've been making inquiries. Mr. Holmes asked me.
Holmes, how could you?
No, not him, the clever one.
But she's still separate from the conspiracy. He doesn't associate her with the noble brides. Even though she has every reason to be one of them, she's also a suffragette with a neglectful husband. But still something divides her from them, and that separation is the cause that the brides are fighting for. Amelia, the first bride, fakes her death by getting everyone's attention.
Let's take the events in order. Mrs. Ricoletti gets everyone's attention in very efficient fashion.
Now stay exactly where you are. Don't move.
All right. Keep your eyes fixed on me.
Using fake blood.
She places one of the revolvers in her mouth while actually firing the other into the ground. An accomplice sprays the curtains with blood, and thus her apparent suicide is witnessed by the frightened crowd below. The rest was just window dressing.
And a substitute corpse.
A substitute corpse bearing a strong resemblance to Mrs. Rigoletti takes her place and is later transported to the morgue. But I deduce Moriarty must have found someone who looked very like me to plant suspicion, and that man, whoever he was, had to be got out of the way as soon as his usefulness ended. That meant there was a corpse in a morgue somewhere that looked just like me.
But that's exactly what they must have done. The conspirators had someone on the inside. They found a body just like Molly Hooper found a body for me when...
Yeah, but we don't need to go into all that again, do we?
Upon returning from the dead, she intercepts her husband at the perfect stage for a perfect drama.
Mrs. Rigoletti persuaded a cab driver, someone who knew her, to intercept her husband outside his favorite opium den. Perfect stage for a perfect drama.
So, can I help you?
Sherlock reasons that this, too, was for the good of the cause. After this, Amelia actually commits suicide now that her work is finished.
There was only one thing left to do.
Swiftly now. I know it is.
All that remained was to substitute the real Mrs. Rigoletti for the corpse in the morgue. This time, should anyone attempt to identify her, it would be positively, absolutely her.
This second suicide is Sherlock's current suicide attempt, the drug overdose.
For God's sake, this could kill you. You could die. Sherlock, are you all right?
Yes, of course I am. Why wouldn't I be?
You should probably just OD'd. You should be in hospital.
He couldn't have taken all that in the last 5 minutes. He was high before he got on the plane.
He rationalizes that he was going to die as a martyr.
But why would she do that? Die to prove a point?
Every great cause has martyrs. Every war has suicide missions, and make no mistake, this is war.
Do we really think that's how Sherlock sees Mary and Moriarty? No, that's how he sees himself. And he's convinced himself that his sacrifice was for a noble cause, getting John away from Mary.
So she decided to make her death count. She was already familiar with the secret societies of America, was able to draw on their methods of fear and intimidation to publicly, very publicly, confront Sir Eustace Carmichael with the sins of his past.
That's a cause a certain conspiracy shares.
This is the heart of it all, John. The heart of the conspiracy.
Sorry, I could never resist a gong, or a touch of the dramatic.
Never have guessed.
Though it seems you share my enthusiasm in that regard. Excellent. Superlative theatre. I applaud the spectacle.
Because the League of Furies isn't just made up of Sherlock and John. It's us. Not like Anderson was us in The Empty Hearse, but specifically us. The Johnlock Conspiracy. The women they have lied to, ignored, and disparaged.
The women we have lied to, betrayed. The women we have ignored and disparaged.
But we will win, because we are right.
So you see, Watson, Mycroft was right. This is a war we must lose.
And again, it makes much more sense to have us associated with John and Sherlock rather than Mary and Moriarty. John explains why Amelia went through with her suicide, because she knew she was only months away from death.
She was dying.
Who was?
Amelia Rigoletti. There were clear signs of consumption. I doubt she was long for this world.
Just like Sherlock did.
Where are you actually going now?
Oh, some undercover work in Eastern Europe.
For how long?
6 months, my brother estimates. He's never wrong.
He's clearly romanticizing his own actions. As a fun note, all of the brides who speak are John mirrors. From Molly, who chides Sherlock for promising her and John everything before abandoning them.
And then he had his way with her. And threw her over. Left her abandoned and penniless.
To Janine, who says that she and John thought they found happiness with Sherlock.
Amelia thought that she found happiness with Rigoletti. But he was a brute too.
Now you let me grieve. How could you do that?
To Jane, who was earlier seen pointing out the problems in John's marriage and asked why John never mentioned her.
Sorry, sir. I just meant you're hardly ever home together anymore, sir.
You are dangerously close to impertinence. I shall have a word with my wife to have a word with you.
Very good, sir. And when will you be seeing her? Why do you never mention me, sir?
In this one scene, Sir Eustace and Thomas Rigoletti are Sherlock, because Sherlock's perception of the case is starting to shift. And that big shift comes when Sherlock explains how the brides made their reflection.
The bride? Holmes, we saw her.
Yes, Watson, we did. The sound of breaking glass. Not a window. Just an old theatrical trick.
It cannot be true, Holmes. It cannot.
No, it can't. It's called Pepper's Ghost. A simple reflection in glass of a living, breathing person.
Notice the label of audience on the screen there. They're talking about Pepper's ghost like it's for theater, like it's meant for an audience. It's more than just this ghost. It's about the mirrors overall. See, if the brides are us, then the reflection they use becomes extremely important. Not just within the show, but as a way to communicate with us. To trick us. Because the writers know how we work. The whole point of writing us in here and having us use mirrors was to applaud us for figuring out that connection. They're telling us we got it right. In that explanation though, they tell us the one mistake of using mirrors.
Their only mistake was breaking the glass when they removed it.
When they reflected the bride, the mirror shattered. That has never happened on this show, and it means something important. It implies a broken connection involving the bride, one that will be a huge mistake on our part. It's only at this point that we start to get introduced to a new mirror. Sherlock thinks he has it all worked out, that it was Lady Carmichael and Amelia working together to bring down Sir Eustace. Again, for clarity, John and himself working together to bring down Mary.
This is the work of a single-minded person. Someone who knew firsthand about Sir Eustace's mental cruelty. The dark secret kept from all but her closest friends, including Amelia Ricoletti, the woman her husband wronged all those years before. If one disregards the ghost, there is only one suspect. Isn't that right, Lady Carmichael?
But then he trips himself up. He sees one small flaw in his logic.
One small detail doesn't quite make sense to me, however. Why engage me to prevent a murder you intended to commit?
That one small seed of doubt is enough for him to abandon this theory and jump to something which frightens him much more.
Doesn't quite make sense. Doesn't quite make sense. Of course it doesn't make sense. It's not real. Oh, Sherlock. Peekaboo.
No, not you. Can't be you.
He still can't accept that Moriarty is alive. But what if someone he hates almost as much was pulling the strings all along? So here, for the first time, Moriarty is associated with the bride. The writers sent out that message that the League of Fury's only mistake was that the mirror shattered when they reflected the bride, and immediately we start getting hit over the head with the bride is Mary is Moriarty parallels.
If one disregards the ghost, there is only one suspect. Isn't that right, Lady Carmichael?
That's not Lady Smallwood, Mr. Holmes.
Who are you?
I demand you speak. Who are you?
Oh, Sherlock. Peekaboo. You're dreaming.
Is he dreaming? That was our biggest mistake, because when you reflect the bride, the mirror shatters, meaning this connection is just a diversion. The imagery is absolutely there, but it's there as a decoy, and it works because that's what Sherlock would assume too. See, Sherlock can't accept that Moriarty is back, so he jumps to the next most obvious conclusion, that Mary, the woman he hates and wants to bring down anyway, has been Moriarty all along. And we fell for it too, even though we're explicitly told here that Sherlock's logic doesn't make any sense.
Is this silly enough for you yet? Gothic enough? Mad enough? Even for you? It doesn't make sense, Sherlock.
So here's the thing, if Moriarty's return isn't John's work, and if we're told that paying attention to the Mary as Moriarty imagery is a mistake, then only one option remains. Because the only thing Sherlock's explanation of Amelia's suicide proves is that someone could shoot themselves in the head and live if they had a blood bag. Amelia survived that first gunshot. That's a thread that is never resolved. And it doesn't make sense to introduce the fact that Amelia survived, that it was possible to survive a staged death via gunshot, and then have Sherlock say at the end of the episode that he somehow proved that Moriarty is definitely dead.
Sherlock, hang on, explain. Moriarty's alive then?
I never said he was alive, I said he was back.
So he's dead.
Of course he's dead, he blew his own brains out, no one survives that. I just went to the trouble of an overdose to prove it.
At no point in the episode does he actually prove that. The only thing he resolves is his own guilt and fear over what happened with Moriarty the last time they met, by telling himself that it's going to be different this time because now he's going to communicate with John, and that Amelia survived shooting herself in the head, therefore Moriarty could have. That's it. Mary isn't Moriarty because Moriarty isn't really dead. And listen, I sympathize. I really do. If you've seen all my videos, you know I used to be fully on board with the Mary is Moriarty theory. But the more I thought about it, the more it didn't make sense. And paying attention to the mirrors in this episode, especially with the context that this is all in Sherlock's head, makes it clear that this connection was introduced as a trick, both for Sherlock and for us. And it worked. Even when they told us right in the same scene it was introduced that it was a mistake. The writers love to surprise their audience, even us. And since they know we won't be surprised by the big gut punch of the series, they threw in a diversion here, because they knew we, like Sherlock, would believe that Mary is Moriarty because we kind of want it to be true, but it's not. That mirror is broken, and them including a decoy mirror is one of the cleverest things they've done on the show. Let's round out the rest of the mirrors then. Once Sherlock starts thinking that Mary is Moriarty, she suddenly has unlimited power. Far more than Mycroft. How could he ever have thought she was working for him, and not the other way around?
Mrs. Amelia Ricoletti, I need to know where she was buried.
What, 120 years ago?
Yes.
That would take weeks to find if those records even exist, even with my resources.
Got it. She even has the power to do the thing he's most afraid of. She takes John away from him when he's begging and needs him most.
John, please.
I'm not playing this time, Sherlock. Not anymore. When you're ready to go to work, give me a call. I'm taking Mary home.
You're what?
Mary's taking me home.
Better.
In order to face this new threat, Sherlock has to resolve his fears from the last time he saw Moriarty. He talks about digging up Amelia's grave like it's completely unrelated to Moriarty's return, because it is.
Moriarty's back. We have a case. We have a real-life problem right now.
Getting to that, it's next on the list. Just let me do this.
This is Amelia's grave, and we've only ever seen one other character's grave on screen, Sherlock's. Sherlock is effectively digging up his own grave here, trying to get back to what happened, to resolve it all. He's 6 feet deep in the ground when Amelia's corpse, his own fake death on the roof, sings not to forget her, and he jumps from the graveyard to the falls of the Reichenbach.
More than likely. At any rate, it was a very long time ago. We do have slightly more pressing matters to hand, little brother. Moriarty, back from the dead?
Again, immediately after Sherlock digs up a corpse and is still trying to go deeper to see what was buried beneath it. This is Moriarty's greeting phrase.
Too deep, Sherlock, way too deep.
He went way too deep into himself, because this is what's been lurking in the depths. This is what he's been trying to resolve all along. What happened on the roof with Moriarty. If he can do that, then he can face whoever is pretending to be Moriarty, because surely it can't actually be him. And he does, by having John save him.
Shall we go over together? It has to be together, doesn't it? At the end, it's always just you and me!
Professor, if you wouldn't mind stepping away from my friend, I do believe he finds your attention a shade annoying.
That's not fair, there's 2 of you.
There's always 2 of us.
And he incorrectly assumes now that all of his troubles with Moriarty are over. That just like with Lady Carmichael and Amelia taking down Sir Eustace, and with John and himself on the waterfall, they'll overcome Moriarty, who he believes is Mary, with each other's help. And just because he's wrong about Moriarty doesn't mean he's wrong about that ending. John and Sherlock will defeat him because they have each other. The message of the story always having been Sherlock and John is made explicit in Sherlock's dream, but unlike the Mary Moriarty parallels, that message has existed throughout the series. And it's what every mirror, both in Sherlock's head and in the real world of the show, has pointed to. It's always been Sherlock and John, and in the end, it will be the 2 of them who get their happy ending. So Moriarty's alive. I've got the mirrors to prove it. I know a lot of you think that Moriarty coming back at this point is boring, but the thing is, it seems predictable to us because we're paying attention, and that's where the show is headed. Keeping the central conflict of the series romantically driven, rather than turning it into some scheme with who knows what as the motivation. Seriously, what is Mary's motivation if you think she's Moriarty? Keeps the message of the show much more focused. If everything boils down to gay romance, even the villain's motivations, that makes a much more consistent show. And again, Moriarty's death is left ambiguous 3 years after Reichenbach, and that really would not be the case if he were actually dead. I am sorry to burst the Mary is Moriarty bubble though, it's a really fun theory, but I kind of actually like it more now that I know that the writers put it in there just to trick us. It was so effective it almost worked for half of the hiatus. It means they're paying attention, and that whatever clues we get for the next series are likely to be tailored to us, whether to throw us off from guessing the plot or to tell us that we were right all along. As is usually the case lately, I referenced several metas by loudest subtext in television from that Google Drive folder when preparing for this video. The fact that Nat also thought that Moriarty wasn't dead doesn't hurt anything. Next up is a counter-argument video on Sherlock's sexuality, and then we can finally start getting into Series 3. Hopefully you're all still on board with me after this. And until the next one, get ready to believe that Moriarty is alive and even the overarching villain points to TJLC. Bye!